Right back at it. This is for Hitter Nation. This is Razim. I'm going to read this article that Quick Hits asked me to read for you guys and sum up some things. It's titled All the Champions Men, a look at the shady figures linked to UFC champion Khabib Nurmagomedov. Karim Zidane delves into the shady figures currently linked to UFC lightweight champion Khabib Nurmagomedov. When Conor McGregor landed in New York City to take part in the UFC 229 press conference, many expected the brash Irishman to provide some entertaining banter in an attempt to promote his upcoming fight against UFC lightweight champion Khabib Nurmagomedov. However, few anticipated that the former two-division champion would call Nurmagomedov's father a coward, his manager a terrorist snitch, or make light of the shady figures linked to the current UFC champion. During the course of the press conference, which took place at Radio City Music Hall in Manhattan, McGregor took aim at Khabib by making references to Zayavyudin Magomedov, the Russian oligarch who sponsored Khabib's until his arrest on embezzlement charges earlier this year. When money got pumped into your camp by that little scumbag that's now in a little 8x10 cell, you thought you were a don. Now look at you, no money left. McGregor did not stop there. Near the end of the 40-minute press conference, McGregor brought up Chechen dictator Ramzan Kadyrov and labeled the champion's father a coward for associating with him. Kadyrov's the Chechen dictator, a crazy man, don't get me wrong, but Khabib's father, lick-ass O'Houlihan, posts a picture of Kadyrov at his mosque, and the caption is, "Together we are stronger." That was McGregor's take. Now, continuing with the article, while McGregor's decision to shed light on some of the more unsavory aspects of Khabib's career was likely an attempt at mind games ahead of the anticipated UFC 229 main event, it still brought attention to the questionable company he keeps and the shady figures who have been provided him with financial support during his career. Example, Magomedov. Alright, from oligarchs to dictators and shady managers, Khabib has been linked to various concerning figures during the course of his illustrious career. This article will attempt to shed light on some of these questionable characters. Questionable character number one, Zayavyudin Magomedov. That's the guy who financially supported Khabib. Alright, UFC 223 is remembered as the event where Khabib extended his undefeated streak to become the UFC lightweight champion. That was versus Iaquinta. However, it was also the night where the promotion's newly minted title holder decided to use his post-fight interview to plead with Russian President Vladimir Putin on television. Following a standard post-fight interview, that's with Joe Rogan, where Khabib thanked his father, Coach Javier Mendez, and his management team while a smiling Joe Rogan held a microphone to Khabib, abruptly switched from English to Russian and appealed to Putin to help Zayavyudin Magomedov, an oligarch arrested on embezzlement and organized crime charges. Our older brother, co-owner of our team, Zayavyudin Magomedov, is in a difficult situation, Khabib said during his UFC pay-per-view. He was very helpful and athletes from Russia, now he has problems. But I want him to know that we, the athletes, are praying for him, and I believe that this situation will soon be resolved. I hope that our leader, Vladimir Putin, will help him. I want to congratulate him on a victory in the last election. When asked at that moment to translate his statement, Khabib appeared reluctant to do so, though eventually explained, "It's a little bit hard for me, brother. I talk about my big brother Zayavyudin Magomedov. I wish him good luck." When asked by Rogan to translate, that's what Khabib said. He was really pleading for Putin to have some leniency or some mercy to help Magomedov off. Magomedov was arrested on March 31st, 2018 and charged with embezzling over 2 billion rubles. That means $35 million American. Fraud and the organization of a criminal community. According to Russia's Ministry of Internal Affairs, Zayevudin Magomedov has been under investigation for several months to determine whether he embezzled money during the construction of a World Cup stadium in Kaliningrad, which his Suma Group won the rights to build in 2014. He was denied bail and remains in pre-trial detention. If found guilty, Magomedov could face up to 20 years in prison. Magomedov, whose wealth is estimated at about $1.2 billion, is a combat sport enthusiast. That's another way of just saying he's a fucking MMA fanboy who has invested significant sums into Russian mixed martial arts. He owned a controlling share of Fight Night Global, that's an MMA company, one of the most successful promotions in Russia. He also founded the Eagles MMA fight team, which UFC star Khabib Nurmagomedov is currently president of. So he's Dana White in that in Eagles MMA. Given that Magomedov was the financial backer behind one of Russia's biggest MMA promotions, his arrest has caused significant ripples effect in the sport. Fight Night Global has been forced to cancel its international expansion plans and is on a gradual decline due to financial concerns. That just means he's not out on bail or anything to pump more money into Eagles MMA, into the globe, to M1, to the global, the Fight Night Global. Several promotions' top fighters, including Sergey Pavlovich, Vitaly Minakov, and Nikita Krylov, we know Nikita because he fought in the UFC, have abandoned the sinking ship in search of other opportunities, or in other words, other promotions or other fight teams. Magomedov has financially supported several fighters, including Khabib. Magomedov reportedly paid the UFC champs back surgery in 2017, which was done in Germany, and funded the majority of Khabib's expenses during training camps. While Magomedov's financial support of Khabib may have run dry, the UFC champion continued to vouch for the oligarch's release by joining a list of 22 notable Russian athletes and champions in an attempt to get the businessman released from jail pending his trial, whether it be bail or for them to drop the charges. I know Khabib knows that Putin has the power to do that, so he pleaded to him. It didn't work. Magomedov is still in jail. Moving on, number 2, Ramzan Kadyrov. In May 2016, Khabib visited Grozny, the capital of Chechnya, where he was invited to host an MMA seminar for fighters who trained at the Akhmat Gym and Training Facility, funded by the Republic's strongman dictator/leader Ramzan Kadyrov, who juggles between his role as a dictator of a country and combat sports enthusiast, so he's also a fanboy for MMA. The Fight Club has already attracted several UFC champions with enticing offers to host seminars and master classes. Khabib, arguably the most recognizable Russian fighter in the world, was the latest to accept such an offer. During Khabib's seminar, Kadyrov walked into the Akhmat facility and greeted the fighters present. He shook hands with a few fighters and gave several other half-hearted hugs and pats on the back as he worked his way towards the UFC star, Khabib. After speaking to the group for several minutes, the dictator decided to show off his grappling skills by dragging a fighter to the mat and throwing him over his head in a move reminiscent of professional wrestling. That's WWE style. He placed a second fighter in a headlock and flung him into the mat before doubling over in laughter. All the fighters present joined in laughter. You know, when a dictator laughs, you better fucking laugh. Prior to leaving the Akhmat facility, Kadyrov posed for a picture with several of his team's most popular fighters, including Magomed Bibliotov. I don't know if you guys remember, his first UFC fight, he got knocked the fuck out in the first round, like in the first 20 seconds. You might want to go to UFC Fight Pass and check that out. That was crazy. He came with a lot of hype. He was undefeated. He got knocked out early. And also Abdul Karim Edilov, both of whom are currently UFC fighters. He then proceeded to pick Khabib up and place him on his shoulder before settling him in a fireman's carry. For those who don't know, that's a wrestling move. Khabirov's foray into MMA began in 2015 when he founded the Ahmed MMA Fighting Club and MMA promotion, known as World Fighting Championship of Ahmed, WFCA, and invited former UFC champion Frank Mir, Fabricio Werdum, and Chris Weidman to attend the first show. He has since hosted other UFC fighters, including former UFC champion Frankie Edgar, title challenger Alexander Gustafsson, as well as Makwan Amirkhani, Alir Tifi, and retired veterans like Renzo Gracie. Werdum continued to make trips to Chechnya during the UFC heavyweight title reign and signed a deal to become an ambassador to Khabirov's MMA promotion. Khabirov has shown some special interest in Khabib, promoting him on Instagram account. Khabirov's Instagram and Facebook accounts have since been banned by the social media networks and hosting him as Ahmad's fight shows. An example of Khabirov's support for Khabib took place shortly following the Dagestani's victory against Michael Johnson at UFC 205. It happened, Khabirov wrote on his Instagram. Dear brother Khabib Nurmagomedov won the fight against Michael Johnson. He did not leave the American with a single chance to win. The battle ended prematurely. Khabib used a painful technique. Khabib made a fiery speech in which he sharply criticized the leadership of the UFC, which unreasonably denied him a title fight. He proved that he is not only a brilliant athlete, but also a patriot of his homeland. That's what Khabirov wrote on his Instagram. At the time, Khabib was also highly complimentary of the Chechen dictator, particularly when speaking to Chechen state media, and obviously in Russian. I would fight with honor at a UFC event in Grozny because Chechnya is a brotherly republic. Khabib told Grozny.tv. Ramzan Akhmatovich told me that he wants to host a tournament in Russia and that he wants me to fight there. I really hope that we will succeed. I will infinitely grateful to him. I think this is in his power to do so. While Khabib has not made any public statements in support of Khabirov since then, that was back in 2014 or 2015, his initial support for the Chechen dictator drew scorn from fans and pundits alike. However, while the UFC lightweight champion appears to have distanced himself from the strongman, even Khabirov has stopped mentioning Khabib in social media posts and sided against him in a recent conflict between Khabib and notable Russian rapper Tamati. He continued to be linked to the Chechen leader through his manager Ali Abdulaziz. We know what that's about. And if you don't know, brings me to point number 3, Ali Abdulaziz. Regarded by some pundits as a necessary evil, Ali Abdulaziz is simultaneously one of the most successful managers in MMA, as well as a toxic influence on the sport he represents. As the president and founder of Dominance MMA, Abdulaziz has spent the last decade building one of the largest rosters of clients of any manager in the sport. The Egyptian-born manager's company represents well over 100 clients, including a host of current and former UFC champions, like Khabib Nurmagomedov, Fabricio Werdum, Cody Garbrandt, and Rashad Evans. His Dominance MMA management team is also home to a wide selection of fighters from Russian Northern Caucasus region, including Omari Akhmedov, Rustam Kabilov, Muslim Salikov, Islam Makhachev, and rising talent Zabit Magomed Shapirov. That's why people just call him Zabit. Abdulaziz's impressive roster and overall managerial influence could be seen as a success story in MMA. However, his career has also been laced with various conflicts of interest, political associations with dictators, oligarchs, and such, and most recently at the 229 press conference, accusations of being a terrorist snitch that overshadow his achievements in the sport. The controversy surrounding Abdulaziz began in late 2015 when a lawsuit filed against
Wusov, which is the World Series of Fighting, claimed that Abdulaziz, at the time the vice president and matchmaker for Wusov, he was actually like, Mick Maynard or the guys who make the matchmaker at the UFC, had a relationship to and control of an entire entity named Dominance LLC. The lawsuit alleged that Abdulaziz was in violation of the Nevada State Athletic Commission's regulations, specifically that state's promoter and certain others prohibited from acting as manager of unarmed combatants from holding certain financial interests. So I think it was a conflict of interest for him being Wusov's vice president and matchmaker and still being a manager to fighters. That was a conflict of interest. Because, obviously you're going to put your guys to give them the best fights and, give them first priority over everybody else. So, I mean, there is a legit conflict of interest there. Here is a section of the complaint. Plaintiff is informed and believes Dominance also arranged sponsorship for its fighters. On several occasions, the sponsors for fighters managed by Dominance and those of Wusov were in conflict. When such conflicts arose, Mr. Abdulaziz also favored the sponsors of Dominance over Wusov sponsors to the detriment of Wusov, which is the World Series of Fighting. So he was actually, giving priority to his own affiliation with the sponsors that were associated with his Dominance MMA over the sponsors that were associated with Wusov. So it was a clear conflict of interest there. Moreover, Aziz refused to make fights that were in the best interests of MMAWC and Wusov, rather than choosing the fights that would generate the most fan interest and thus revenue for Wusov. Aziz set up matches that favored his fighters and his pocket. Aziz also often refused to set fights for fighters that were not managed by him. A promising fighter and champion, Jessica Aguilar, was under contract with Wusov, and Aziz did not arrange fights for her required under Wusov banner contractual obligations. Miss Aguilar was not one of Mr. Abdulaziz's fighters. So he obviously it was some preferential treatment too. So, I mean, that's some, if you were in his shoes, that's some slimy, grimy shit, but it affected his bottom line. He preferred his bottom line rather than the promotion's bottom line, which is not good. At the time, the Dominance MMA website listed Abdulaziz's wife, Nurwan Ghiassi, as the company's president. This has since been changed back to Abdulaziz. However, it appeared that Abdulaziz maintained an interest in the company because several of the fighters contracted to his management team referred to him specifically as their manager. This raised suspicion significantly, as it was clear that Abdulaziz maintained an interest in Dominance MMA, which is his promotion company, including also several of the Dominance MMA clients also competed in the Wusov roster, including David Branch, Marlon Moraes, and Justin Gaethje. Wusov eventually parted ways with Abdulaziz. And I don't need to go into explanation why. It's because his business was preferential over their business, and that shit couldn't continue. Okay, Abdulaziz's indiscretions do not end there. After leaving Wusov and returning to his primary role as manager of Dominance MMA, Abdulaziz began to secure relationships with several authoritarian regimes that just so happened to be fans of combat sports. So he was getting in chummy with the oligarchs and all these Russian dictators that were fanboys. He was using his influence with them to get a leg up in the sport by getting certain fighters and certain promotions and stuff like that. So he was looking for an advantage. In 2015, Abdulaziz, along with Rizvan Magomedov, president of Dominance MMA in Russia, secured a lucrative deal for then UFC champion Fabricio Werdum to become the ambassador for Kadyrov's Akhmat MMA fighting club and promotion. Abdulaziz told MMA Junkie that Fabricio was happy to accept what ultimately was a very lucrative offer. But this deal is not just a financial arrangement. He was in Chechnya earlier this year and he was treated like a king. So they wine and dined him in Chechnya. And that has to do a lot with Kadyrov. Kadyrov treated him real good. I don't know, maybe he was getting him some hoes. Maybe he was driving around some fancy cars, treated him to the best hotels, the best life, caviar, lobster, and shrimp all day long, you know. They were whining and dining real good to get him in under their wing. Apart from Murdoom, Abdulaziz also represents a handful of Chechen and Dagestani fighters who are linked to Kadyrov through his Akhmat MMA gyms, facilities funded by Kadyrov's regime, including Magomed Biblatov, Abdul Karim Edilov, Ruslan Magomedov, Saeed Magomedov, and Magomed Ankalaev. It would be noted that Abdulaziz does not represent any Chechen fighters not, and I say not in emphasis, not linked to Kadyrov, despite the long list of talented fighters from the region. Mind you, there's a lot of fighters in that region, but majority of the people he manages are all associated with Kadyrov. Apart from representing fighters linked to the vicious warlord who has reportedly conducted a purge of gay men in Chechen Republic, along with various other crackdowns on his people, Abdulaziz is also highly complimentary of the dictator. In an interview with Bloody Elbow in 2015, Abdulaziz stated that he would not mind going to Chechnya and putting on a World Series of Fighting event there. Even co-promote Akhmat MMA, which is obviously Kadyrov's fight gym. Despite Kadyrov's harrowing human rights abuses, Abdulaziz explained that the fact that Kadyrov will go and train with these fighters is something remarkable. A leader of a country supporting our sport of MMA and investing in it is great. As a result of Abdulaziz's public support for the dictator, he remains the sole representative of the fighters that link to Kadyrov who currently compete in the UFC. So he has an exclusive to all of Kadyrov's fighters. He must have some backdoor deal with this guy. He must funnel some money to this guy because he has exclusive rights to all of these Chechen fighters that nobody can get their hands on. After carving out a niche representing Kadyrov's fighters in the UFC, Abdulaziz formed a relationship with a second authoritarian government, the Kingdom of the Bahrain, which is, with Bahrain's king through one of monarch's princes, Sheikh Khalid bin Hamad Al Khalifa. So we just call him Sheikh Al Khalifa. Apart from being a member of the Bahraini royal family, Sheikh Khalid, that's who is, of course, is Al Khalifa, is a military officer with the rank of major, the first deputy chairman of the Supreme Council for Youth and Sports. Sheikh Al Khalifa also happens to be the co-founder of the KHK MMA organization, which consists of a local MMA gym as well as the Brave FC promotion. Through the patronage of Sheikh Al Khalifa, KHK MMA recruited renowned coaches, Conor McGregor's coach, John Kavanagh, chief among them. You see the connection here? So I think Kavanagh getting his hands a little dirty, mixing with certain people, and prominent UFC fighters like former lightweight champion Franklin Edgar and current champion Khabib to join the upstart team in Bahrain. Those who joined the KHK MMA team were given access to elite resources at no cost, including medical coverage, a rare deal in the combat sports realm. The prince also sponsored fighters like Edgar to wear the Bahraini flag during his appearance on UFC broadcasts. On one particular occasion at the TUF 22 finale, Sheikh Khalid Al Khalifa actually accompanied Edgar to the octagon. While Kavanagh and Khabib are no longer linked to KHK MMA, Edgar was recently a guest commentator on one of the Braves FC shows, while another fighter represented by Abdulaziz, Zabit Magomed Sharirpov, posted a picture of himself posing with the Sheikh Khalid in Bahrain. It should be noted that Sheikh Khalid has not been implicated in any crimes. However, he represents a monarchy with significant human rights abuses in its name, particularly during the Arab Spring in 2011. The Bahraini monarchy continued to oppress its Shia Islam majority, imprisoning peaceful dissenters and stripping others of their nationality. While Abdelaziz's conflict of interest and established links to dictators and Gulf royalty is evidently based in Virginia, as if you didn't know, he was among Cohen's most important and best paid informants, earning by his own account hundreds of thousands of dollars for his efforts. Cohen wanted to share Abdelaziz, who was known in files as a confidential informant number 184 with the FBI, so that he could work overseas. The Bureau agreed to sponsor Abdelaziz, provide him with special green cards so he could enter and leave the United States whenever he wanted. He worked in Trinidad and Tobago, Venezuela, and elsewhere. But the more that the FBI worked with him, the more suspicious they grew. On April 8, 2008, at the FBI's demand, the NYPD officially took Abdelaziz to the Bureau's office downtown, where Agent Michael Templeton strapped him to a polygraph machine. The questions simply started with, "Are you now in New York City? Are you currently employed? Is today Friday?" When Templeton asked Abdelaziz if he intended to be honest with the FBI about whether he told anybody he was a government agent, Abdelaziz said yes. The machine said otherwise. Templeton seized on it. Polygraphers commonly use that question to spot double agents. People work as a spy for one agency, but true loyalty lies with another. As he pressed Abdelaziz, the FBI began to believe that he had told people in Egypt about his secret life. I guess he told them that he was a snitch again and again, and Abdelaziz denied it. The polygraph said he was lying. Templeton continued until finally Abdelaziz asked to use the bathroom. Realizing that this was not going well, the NYPD officials in the room tried to smooth things over with Templeton. They offered him explanations for why Abdelaziz might have seemed deceitful. But when Abdelaziz returned from the bathrooms, tension remained. As Templeton delved into Abdelaziz's past, the NYPD abruptly ended the test. It was an embarrassing moment. The department's prized informant, number 184, the department's prized informant apparently lying. The FBI closed the file as deceptive with no admissions, interrupted and terminated by the NYPD. The FBI severed its relationship with Abdelaziz, and the government tried unsuccessfully to deport him. So they wanted him gone, but they couldn't get rid of him. All right. The last paragraph says here, as previously stated, McGregor's detailed attacks on Khabib and those closest to him is likely an attempt to both promote the upcoming fight and play mind games against a stoic, undefeated champion. It can also be viewed as a strategic attempt to pivot negative attention from McGregor, who was involved in a bus attack, an incident that led to several UFC fighters being hospitalized, and McGregor's pleading guilty in a Brooklyn courthouse as part of the deal with prosecutors to resolve the charges. It should also be noted that McGregor posed for a photo of Russian President Vladimir Putin during the World Cup final, a controversial figure who is also Kadyrov's benefactor. Regardless of McGregor's personal reasons, his reference to the likes of Magomedov and Kadyrov shed light on some of the shady characters who have been linked to Khabib at some point during his career. Now, I'm going to leave it at that for now. There's really nothing. Everything I read was self-explanatory. I made some comments here and there. And I guess the best way is, if you want more, or you want me to sum up something or say something in another video giving my opinion, just let Quick Hits know, or just message me on Quick Hits message board. I think that does it, because this is MMA Quick Hits, the best MMA channel fucking out there. I don't know what else to say. Fuck it. It is what it is. In rural Virginia, he was among Cohen's most important, best paid